Good evening, afternoon, or night to anybody who's following this channel today. Today's a special day. Today, December the 12th, the Catholic Church celebrates the anniversary of Our Lady of Guadalupe manifests herself to Juan Diego, a native of Mexico, actually from the tribe of the Aztecs. A lot of people who are from other religions frown upon this, but anybody who knows anything about the history of Christianity would be very pleased with this apparition, because it is thanks to Our Lady of Guadalupe that the Americas, especially Latin America, opened its doors to Christianity. Now, in commemorating today, I decided to call today's video things you probably did not know about Our Lady of Guadalupe, because there's a lot more that goes down in connection with Our Lady of Guadalupe. So let's take it step by step. Let's see how much can we provide during this time. Number one, first thing you probably did not know about Our Lady of Guadalupe. Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico originally was not to be pronounced as Guadalupe, but as Cuatlachope. You see, when she identified herself to Juan Diego, she identified herself as Saint Mary Cuatlachope. Cuatlachope comes from two Aztec words, Cuautl, which means a snake, and chope, to tread upon. So Cuatlachope meant she who steps on the snakes. This is the way Our Lady identified herself to Juan Diego, Saint Mary who steps on snakes. Now, this needs to remind us of Genesis 3:15, the first Marian prophecy in Scripture. Genesis 3:15, God tells the serpent, "I shall create enmity between you and the woman, between her inheritance, between her descendants and your descendants. You shall bite her feet while she steps on your head." Hence the connection. This is also part of the reason why she appears as stepping on the moon. You see, to the ancient Aztecs, the moon represented a snake goddess, Koyoshavki, the snake goddess. And you have Mary stepping on the snake goddess, which proving that she was more powerful than the pagan gods that the Aztecs worshipped. How did Cuatlachope become Guadalupe? Here we go to number two. The second thing we probably don't know about Our Lady of Guadalupe. The Lady of Guadalupe that we know of in Mexico is not the original Lady of Guadalupe either. You see, it is authentic that Mary appeared to Juan Diego. But in the meantime, in Spain, there was a different Our Lady of Guadalupe in the town of Extremadura. This is the reason why we now pronounce Our Lady of Guadalupe from Mexico as Guadalupe instead of Cuatlachope. Mostly because when Juan Diego showed up and identified the name of Our Lady to Fray Zumárraga, who was then the Bishop of Mexico City, when Juan Diego identified her as Cuatlachope, in his mind, Fray Zumárraga native of the township of Extremadura, Spain, where the other Guadalupe was. Well, that's what he heard, Guadalupe. So that's how the word Cuatlachope morphed into Guadalupe. Number 3, the origins of the Guadalupe in Extremadura, Spain, can be traced as far back as the apostolic time. What? How can this be? Well, early Christian tradition has it that St. Luke, the evangelist, in addition to being an evangelist, in addition to being a doctor, he was also an artist. He liked to make sculptures. We know through the Gospels that Luke spent a lot of time with Mary. The first 2 verses in the Gospel of Luke tells us that he took the time to interview those who knew Jesus personally, face to face. Obviously, this includes Mary, the mother of Jesus. And we know this to be for sure because the Annunciation Gospel, the Gospel of when Mary gets the visit of the angel, is most complete in the Gospel of Matthew. Over not Matthew, excuse me, the Gospel of Luke. Over 60 verses are dedicated to the whole dynamics of the angel appearing to Elizabeth, the angel is appearing to Mary, Mary going to visit Elizabeth. No other gospel except the Gospel of Luke provides that information. Plus, it's also the only one that gives us the complete conversation that took place between the angel and Mary. It is safe to say that during all that time that Luke spent interviewing Mary, that he also could have taken the time to have her pose for one of his sculptures. So hence, that is the story. Now, legend behind this image has it as follows. When Luke died, his image was buried with him. In time, when the Byzantine Empire rose to power, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire had the remains of Luke the Apostle transferred from the Holy Land to the city of Constantinople, where he had a church built in honor of St. Luke. When they dug up his relics, his remains, to transport them to the church he had built for him, the emperor found the sculpture of Mary. He loved the sculpture so much he decided to keep it for himself. As time went by, this one of his descendants decided to gift this image to the Pope, who in turn decided to give this image to Saint Leandro, one of the preachers in around the city of Sevilla. Actually looked upon as one of the possibly founders of the diocese of Sevilla. And from there, it was transferred to its current location in Extremadura, Spain. And the name at that time that the Spaniards had given this sculpture, that according to legend comes from the time of St. Luke, was, but it was named. The sculpture was named after the river that flows right next to the church, the river of Guadalupe, which gives us another point of things that you probably did not know about Our Lady. And this one is pretty much beautiful considering what's going on today in the Holy Land. Guadalupe happens to be an Arabic name. I'm sure many of you remember that there was a period of 400 years where the Muslims ruled a great part of Spain. Well, many of the rivers were named after after the Arabic words, like Guadalupe, which ended up in and of itself, the word Guadalupe ended up forging a combination between the Arabic culture and the um, Spanish culture. Guadal, the word Guada in Arabic means river, and Lupe was a very ancient word in the local pre-Spanish, if you will, which referred to wolves. So Guadalupe was a combination of languages to refer to the river of wolves, which is the name of the river that was running next to that church. Uh, we have it right there. Saint Mary. Mary is a Hebrew name. Yes, Mary is a Hebrew name. We know that's the name of our mother of our God, our King. And we have the full name of this of the River of Wolves, mixing up the English. Excuse me, mixing up the pre-Spanish and the Arabic together. And then later on, mixing it up with a native of Mexico with the words Cuatlachope. Number 5, thing number 5 you probably didn't know, it's connections with a special animal. Juan Diego, the person to whom Mary appeared, his name was Juan Cuatlahuatzin. Cuatlahuatzin is a Aztec last name, which literally translates as the speaking eagle. Interesting enough, in the book of Revelation, where we find the prophecy predicted, it tells us that that Mary was given the wings of an eagle to be taken to away from the dragon for 2.5 times. There's a connection with the eagle. Then we go on to find out that the person who predicted this prophecy back in the year 93 was St. John the Apostle, also known as St. John the Evangelist, because he wrote the Gospel of John, which in turn is represented by an eagle. Why? Because the Gospel of John was seen to be one of the four. Well, the eagle represents how are the four Gospels. The Gospel of John is the most spiritual and also the most Marian of all the four. Another thing, number 6, that you probably didn't even know, the name John appears a lot. So you see, we find this prophecy predicted in Revelation 12, the book of Revelation, chapter 12, which was written by the apostle John, where he saw that another John, Juan Diego, was to get this message from Our Lady of Guadalupe, in which also he was Juan Diego, the second John, had to deliver the message to the third John, John of Zumarraga, the bishop of Mexico City, who couldn't speak Aztec, and since he couldn't speak Aztec, he had a fourth John translated for them. Excuse me a few seconds while I turn off the microphone briefly. All right, continuing along these lines, uh, there's a sixth, excuse me. Why is the word, okay, let me backtrack to the eagle I spoke about earlier. If we go back and reflect on the symbolisms of the four gospels, the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle, these also end up being the same as the cherubim that dance along the throne of God, according to Ezekiel chapter 1. So hence, we find um, the angels connecting to her as well, obviously as a queen of heaven. Now, point number 7 that you probably didn't know. Within the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, we find all the Marian prophecies merged into one. As I explained earlier, her stepping on the moon connects with Genesis 3:15. I put enmity between you and the woman, her descendants, and your descendants. She will step over your head while you try and bite her foot. Yet, if you pay close attention to the image, you see that she is wearing straight hair. It's not even braided. This, in the Aztec culture, represented that she is single, virgin. Yet you see that she is wearing a black bow around her waist, which is Aztec culture is symbolized pregnancy. What did Juan Diego see here? He saw that she, in front of him, he was seeing a virgin who was pregnant. And looking at the wings of the child underneath her, he understood that this is a divine being, a divine person being born. So she sees of a pregnant virgin giving birth. Where else have we seen that? We have Isaiah 7:14. For behold, the princess. For behold, the virgin is pregnant, and she shall give birth to a son, who shall be called Emmanuel. God is with us. At the same time, he sees that she is crowned with the stars, making her queen of heaven. Notice that she's dressing the sun. She's rocking the sun, stepping on the moon and the stars. So right there, he connects with the prophecies of Revelation chapter 12. And he sees that she's the queen of heaven. This connects to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verse 28. How so? Luke 1:28, we see that the angel appears to Mary and he pronounces the following words: Hail, full of grace. In the Greek language, it gives us the specific words. Haire ke charitomeni. Haire was a very special greeting reserved only for when you greeted royalty. Nobody was greeted with the word haire except if they were a crown. Yet these are the words. This is the very wording that the angel received, that the angel gives Mary when he greets her, thus greeting her as Queen of Heaven. Interestingly enough, this connects with another part. The word kaire, the reading of kaire, was always pronounced with one knee on the floor and the arm across the chest. When we look at the image of Juan Diego, we see that he has one knee on the floor, the same way we understand the angel Gabriel would have appeared to her as well. I lost count. I think I'm in item number 8. I found this very interesting. Chapter 12 of the last book of the Bible. Get this. The very last book of the Bible. Chapter 12 prophesies or predicts the same wonderful event that occurs on the 12th day of the last month of the year. 12th of the last book predicts the 12th of the last day. The first words in chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, the last one, says, "Behold, there was a great sign in heaven, a woman dressed in the sun, stepping on the moon," which is exactly what we see happen on December 12th, 1531. The 12th of the last day, the day 12th of the last month of the year 1531. Lastly, there was back in the 80s, there was an ophthalmologist. Well, for straight out curiosity, checked the pupils of the image of Guadalupe in Juan Diego's tilma, in the clothing that Juan Diego had over here. And he noticed that that the pupils displayed what is called the Purkinje effect, which is the distortion when I'm looking at something and that something reflects from my eyes, it would appear slightly distorted due to the curvature of the eyes and the angle at which the light hits it. He noticed that both in the right and the left eyes, signifying or telling us kind of that image of Guadalupe appeared to have been a living image, at least during the time of Juan Diego. And get this, first of all, those images are way too small for any brush to paint, disproving any claims or accusations that people may have made a picture of it, because it is impossible. Besides, in 1531, when this image appeared for the first time, people did not know anything about the Purkinje effect. Later on, an engineer, as technology got better, a computer engineer from Peru called Tonsman uses his technology to make this image larger. The ratio was 1,000 to 1. In other words, for every millimeter, because these measurements were too tiny for even inches, for every tiny little millimeter, it was portrayed to be as big as a meter. If we could describe it in inches, every inch of the image was reflected by 1,000 inches in the printout of the enlargement. This led him to make some interesting discoveries. These discoveries involved, for example, 11 human figures First and most distinguishable was the image of an indigenous Mexican wearing his tilma, who we obviously know was Juan Diego. To his left, we see the image of a very elderly priest, whom we have come to assume was Juan Zumárraga. But very interestingly, in the far right, there was an image of a lady of African origins. This led for a while so many people to think that it was a fake until 5 years after the discovery of this image, somebody found the testament of Fray Zumárraga, the bishop. And it turns out he had a servant who was of African descent, whose name, by the way, was Maria. They also found that next to Maria, the African servant of Father Zumárraga was another native person who was sitting, as it is typical for natives to, of that time, to be sitting when they were waiting to be tended. And then they found another face for another priest right next to the image of Zumárraga, who appeared to be whispering in his ear. For a long time, nobody knew about this until another documentator came forth releasing specifics that there was this guy called Juan Dominguez, whom I already spoke about, who was the official translator for Bishop Zumárraga in things relating to the indigenous peoples. That is the first part of it. Yet, then there's another set of 6 other mysterious figures, because kind of like overlapping this, there is another image where there's a family of, I forget, it's 6 or 7, I think it's 7. You have the grandfather, the grandmother, the father, the mother, and 3 children. A little girl, a little boy, and a baby who's being carried around on the back of the woman through what in Mexico is called a rebozo, or the special blanket folded a specific way to help carry the baby. What I find interesting about this is that one of the men is wearing a sombrero. Keep in mind that in 1530, that the image of Guadalupe appeared in 1531, and those sombreros were not invented till the 1800s. Not only that, they are also seen wearing jeans, which was not invented again until the 1800s. That said, it's probably implying to us that Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, was looking, yes, at what was happening right there in the time of Our Lady in the time of when Juan Diego hands the sign over to Bishop Zumárraga, but then he also sends Our Lady is also seeing what is to happen in the not so distant future in the 1800s. For today, this is pretty much all that I have. I say goodbye to you, calling forth, long live Christ the King, Nitzahon, Israel.